Dr. Migliore, thanks for coming on. This is our first video episode of the AOCPMR podcast. You have sort of carved out a niche for yourself in esports medicine, and I was wondering, can you just define what is esports medicine to you?
Yeah, so that's the first question that I always get whenever I'm around doctors. The first thing is you got to know what esports is, and esports is competitive video gaming. So the esports industry generated $2 billion in revenue last year. That's competitive video gaming. That's not like Animal Crossing or, you buying extra levels on Candy Crush. It's competitive gaming. Well, I just had a flashback to medical school sitting in lecture playing Candy Crush.
Good times.
Yes, and people can win $20 million in a weekend. So these players, the ones competing in these games, train for like 9, 10, 12 hours a day, 6 days, 6, 7 days a week, and they get injuries. And so it's taking care of the health of competitive video gamers.
That's great. And I wrote down some little statistics that I think might be a good time to bring some of this up. So, why is esports a thing? Why is it worth consideration? If we look in terms of viewership, the 2019 League of Legends World Championship averaged 21.8 million viewers. So that was the average, not like an all-time peak. Their all-time
Right.
peak, I think, was over 100 million or something. So for the NBA, the 2019 NBA Finals averaged 15.14 million. So League of Legends, this is one game that's more average viewership than the NBA Finals. Also, the MLB World Series in 2019 was only 13.91 million viewers, and the Stanley Cup 5.3 million viewers. So this is a single game that had average viewers higher than sort of three of the biggest sports in the world. The Super Bowl, I think, is still a little bit higher. The Super Bowl 54 averaged 102.1 million viewers, but still, I mean, it's the Super Bowl, and that's pretty impressive. And then in terms of earnings, in the 2019 Fortnite World Cup, a 16-year-old named Kyle Giersdorf won $3 million. And 2 weeks before that, Novak Djokovic won the Wimbledon tournament, and he only won $2.95 million. So there's more earnings in a single Fortnite game that a 16-year-old just won than the best tennis player of all time.
Wow, interesting viewpoint there. Interesting viewpoint.
I think I've always been sort of tangentially aware of everything is competitive. There's competitive axe throwing. There was like a carpentry team at my college where they would chop down trees and stuff, so I know that there's competitive scenes for everything. But when you compare it to these these massive cultural icons like hockey or golf or tennis, and you see that it's surpassing that, and that's just for a single video game again. There's a lot of stuff at stake here, and there's major sponsors like Coca-Cola and Red Bull, and this is an industry that generates so much money a year, and especially during the pandemic. One thing that I saw was that the Twitch audience has grown by a third in just March, where all these other sports are just grinding to a halt. Esports can continue, and all these competitive games like Overwatch, and others. There was all of them are continuing through this pandemic when everything else is shut down. So the viewership is only continuing. Is that kind of a fair way to hype up what this is?
Definitely. And I think esports was set to eclipse the Super Bowl by 2025. But with the pandemic times, we'll see. Maybe 2021's the year.
Yeah, it's possible. If this season gets shut down, or if we have a resurgence, there's no reason this could be the only thing people are watching. So backing up just a little bit, I was wondering, can you talk to us about your journey through medicine thus far? Where are you now? What brought you into medicine, and what brought you into the field of PM&R specifically?
That's a good question. When everyone asks, why did you want to be a doctor? Right. That was the med school question, and then the residency question. And truthfully, I was in 8th grade, and I really admired my literature teacher, admired her, thought she was the best. And she was talking about a class of hers from 10 years prior. And she said, that was my best class. 8 of them became medical doctors. and I said, "Oh, Mrs. Staciu respects doctors. I'm going to be a doctor." And then I was just so stubborn that I did it. Actually did it. Luckily, I love it. Thank God. There are other reasons that I eventually went to medical school and residency, but I like that story better. And I was in medicine, doing your fourth year rotations, and everyone had their field, right? Like ever since first year, there was always the cardiologist, and someone who knew they were going to be a surgeon and like would practice knitting in class because they wanted like to be ambidextrous. I liked everything was my problem. I really liked medicine. I really liked peds, except for, the whole parental aspect. That was having two extra patients was never fun. I really liked surgery. I loved surgery. And then I loved emergency medicine, and I went to match and went to apply for, residency programs. And I applied to 5 different specialties. I was like, I have no idea what I want to do. And then one of my buddies was like, what about physiatry? And I was like, what do you mean, what about physiatry? Like, what is physiatry? And I learned about it, and I, went and did my rotations, and I loved it. It was, in medicine, sometimes I felt like we were just keeping people going until the next thing came up. We weren't really doing a lot for the patient, and which is not true, which is not how I believe about medicine. But it just kind of felt like I was keeping people going. And in physiatry, I feel like we're really making people better. We're making people heal. We're healing people. We're making them love their lives again. There's nothing better than when someone comes in after a stroke and, you can just see the defeat. You can see how sad they are about their life. And then by the time you discharge them, they're up and walking and, talking smack about the Redskins to you. And like physiatry is just so rewarding. And another big part of it was I thought about how much I loved emergency medicine. I thought I still do. But then I thought about what I wanted to be doing when I was 40. Did I want to be working 12-hour shifts? And doing all of that, or did I want to have a outpatient practice where my patients were consistent and I was doing the things that I love. So physiatry kind of just fell into my lap, and I am so very happy with it.
That's awesome. I have like a similar kind of background going in. I'm still a third year medical school, but this is something I want to do, and I was dead set on surgery before, and I did all this research, and I was in all these organizations, and I was very invested in the surgery route. And right. I really just had this like change of heart where I was like, I don't know if I hate myself enough to do this for the rest of my life. It's amazing. And I worked in the OR before starting medical school. But it was just like a whole other responsibility. If you're an orderly who gets to scrub in and retract, everything's awesome because you have like no responsibility or accountability. And it seems like a very different when it's your medical license on the line and you're the one who has to like put these hours in. I just get called in for like random, can you hold this? Can you do that? It's Suction. A whole other ball game. So I really had like this sort of existential crisis where for so long surgery was this thing I wanted to do. And then I have a daughter now, and it changed a lot of my perspective. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this, So, but PM&R, I've just been really invested in it, and it seems like very lifestyle friendly, right? It seems like people enjoy it. And when I think about like esports medicine, what I imagine it is, and I guess we'll get into that more in a second. It seems like PM&R would be a very natural fit for that, like a lot of the interventional stuff and EMGs. So how did you when did you start cultivating, bringing like your personal interests about like esports or gaming and bringing that into a more professional realm? What was that process like? When did you start seeing yourself as the gamer doc?
Also, you definitely have the traps of an orthopedic surgeon. You said surgeon, and I was like, orthopedic surgeon for sure.
That was, I worked for an ortho spine guy, and I was like, I want to be that guy,
Yeah.
And then after a while, I'm like, I don't know if I want to be that guy.
Maybe for like a day. So I've always been a gamer. I've been gaming since I was 6 years old. in med school, I was in a long distance relationship. So that meant every night I would, you'd study until 8 or 9, and then I'd play video games until like 1 a.m. And you know how it is when you first start going to medical school, first year, second year, everyone in your life starts asking you medical questions, right? Like they're like, hey, can you prescribe me antibiotics yet? Hey, can you call this into my pharmacy? Like, well, you know what this rash is?
Oh yeah, my grandma calls me all the time. Like, tell me all about the coronavirus. I'm like,
Yeah.
I got a 5-minute sketchy video I could regurgitate to you. It's not gonna help, but I could pretend.
You're like, I know a lot about biochemistry. Is
Yeah,
that
does this
helpful,
help?
Grandma?
You want to know about the Krebs
Krebs
cycle?
Yeah. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
Yeah. Does that help?
So this was happening in real life when I was going to med school, but it was also happening every night when I was playing Call of Duty. I was playing Modern Warfare 2, I think, at the time. And my buddies were asking me medical questions, and some of them would be about like a cough or whatever, but most of them would be about wrist pain or hand pain or neck pain or back pain. But like my buddies were 20 years old, things that normal 20-year-olds, unless you're in medical school, don't have. And they go to their doctors. I tell them to leave me alone because I'm playing video games. I don't want to talk about medicine. And they'd go to their doctors, and their doctors would tell them to stop playing video games. Hey, it hurts when you play video games. Just stop playing video games, which is not an acceptable answer to me. It's not. You wouldn't tell a marathon runner, hey, running, I guess, just not for you anymore. Like gaming has always been one of my biggest passions. Gaming has always been very healthy for me because it's a stress reliever, and gaming has been a way that I've kept in touch with a lot of my friends throughout my life. So that's really when it started. It just became an unacceptable answer. And then the summer between med school and intern year, the day after graduation, I put all my stuff in storage, packed a bag, and I hiked the Appalachian Trail. And while I was on the Appalachian Trail, you have a lot of time to yourself. You have a lot of time to think. And I thought a lot about a lot of stuff. And one of them was about what I want to spend my life doing. And gaming is my passion, like I said. And why would I not want to do that? Why would I not want to pursue my passion? So that kind of when the idea was formed. And at AAP 2018, it was AOCPMR 2018. It was in Atlanta. I was out at the resident dinner. The program director takes us all out to dinner, and had maybe one or two many glasses of wine. And I told everyone at the table what my idea was. I said, this is what I want to do. And everyone at the table was like, that's an amazing idea. That's a great idea. So then that night I went home and I bought the domain name, and I got the Twitter handle, signed up for Twitter. I'd never used Twitter in my life before. Didn't even have Facebook. All I had was an Instagram that I posted it regularly on. And I went home and I got the Twitter, and that's October of 2018. It's been going strong since.
So as would you consider this a field or a specialty, or is your role more of like an advocate for here's some preventative stuff you can do? What is like your role then? Are you the team doc? Does someone like blow out their ACL and you go in and, like what is that in a competitive aspect, or is it more of like a spreading awareness? What does that look like for you in practice?
So there are, I would say probably 10 physicians in the country doing this right now. And there's people like Dr. Melita Moore, who she's a, PM&R trained sports medicine doctor, who is the head team doctor for our NBA 2K team in here in DC. And that's what she does, right? So she's there at their practices, she's there at their competitions, she's traveling all over the world. She travels all over the world for the USA polo team, but she also travels for esports. So she's the one there overseeing their training, treating their injuries, seeing them for their injuries. And there's people out in California doing that as well. And that is definitely a field that I saw myself doing, right? I was going to do a sports fellowship before I decided to not pursue a fellowship and do this full time. And that's what I want to do. I love silent training. But if I am a head doctor for an esports team, I have a team of like 15 people, right? And I can make them the best athletes that I think I can make them. I can prevent their injuries. I can treat them with OMM. I can, make sure that they are in tip-top shape. That means I have an N of 15, right? And I sat back and I really thought about where my talents are and what makes me happy. And what makes me happy, my favorite part of the office visit with a patient is talking to them about the preventative stuff, talking to them about the education. Like, here are all these stretches you can do to prevent this from happening. So I decided that instead of directly treating patients, my skills were best served in taking the information that's out there, taking the information that, Dr. Moore is researching and coming up with, and the people at NYIT are coming up with, taking that and making it into a palatable, entertaining format, and then broadcasting it for the rest of the world. There's 40 million Americans play video games. Wait, no, it's 49% of Americans. So whatever, is that like 150?
Half of America.
Half of America. Let's make it easy. So if I make one video about, hey, just adjust the angle of your keyboard a little bit, and that's going to help you prevent carpal tunnel syndrome, and then 10,000 people see that, then I have an N of 10,000. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the information and educating people on it. So that's where I'm at.
Great. And if I were to imagine, this field is like, it's a very nascent field, right? There's not a lot of people. You say like 15 in the whole country are doing this right now. And if your role is like more of like an advocacy thing, I can also imagine like having like in practice a real boots on the ground team doctor. That makes perfect sense to me. They have, I believe there is a fellowship for performing arts for like piano players or violinists, and it's very focused on these small like micro actions with your hands, like dexterity skills. And to me, this is something that is very applicable to video games or
Definitely.
On a keyboard or a controller. It's the same kind of injuries. Speaking of which, what kind of injuries do you try to prevent? What do you see the most in gamers? What's something that's on the horizon that everyone should be aware of?
High-level video gamers, people who are playing games with a lot of keyboard clicks. So when we talk about gaming, some of it is controller gaming, like Xbox. You're sitting on the couch with your buddy and you're doing couch co-op. Some of it's controller games like Rocket League, games like NBA 2K are on the controller, but most of competitive gaming is done on a PC. So with your left hand, you have your hands on the keys, and with your right hand, you have your hands on the mouse. And that left hand can do sometimes up to 600 actions per minute, which is a huge amount. 600 actions, so that's like 10 a second. And as you could imagine from those repetitive motions with the tiny little muscles of our hands and wrists that really aren't meant to be doing the things that they're doing, you get a lot of tendon issues. You get a lot of tendinitis, but a lot of tendinopathy too, right? They're not blowing out their ECU from tapping shift too many times. They're creating micro traumas over and over and over again, and as a result, there's this pathologic response in the tendon, and you get tendinopathy. And then 2 weeks later, they go bowling with their buddies, and they go to throw the bowling ball, and bam, ECU tendinitis because of those micro traumas that have been building up and building up. So we see a lot of hand and wrist injuries. We see a lot of nerve injuries too. People, they're a little bit young for carpal tunnel, but a lot of cubital tunnel from the side of the chair. Outside of the hand and wrist, a lot of back pain. So it's not necessarily like we're seeing disorders, we're seeing just mechanical back pain, but it's in a 19-year-old, right? And it's affecting their lives. Lower extremity injuries as well. We see a lot of hip flexion tightness. People are susceptible to DVTs. We're seeing a lot of really interesting, but like not good is a lot of esports players are suffering from pneumothoraxes, actually.
Wow, interesting.
Very interesting, right? We're not quite sure of the connection. I have theories, but we're not quite sure about the connection. A lot of eye issues too. Eye strain is huge in the gaming population. I mean, it's huge in med students too. And then mental health. Mental health is a huge component of esports medicine. The grind is very taxing. If you want to make it to this level of performance, if you want to be sponsored by one of these teams, you have to work for many years without a lot of recognition, without a lot of payoff. And then once you make it, there's a long line, thousands of people behind you who are chomping at the bit for your spot. So you have to remain competitive. So mental health is a huge component of esports medicine too.
Yeah, I didn't really think about the mental health part of it. And you said in your own experience, like video games has been a way of like connecting you to people, like long distance and stuff. I could also imagine for other people, it could be an isolation thing. If you are practicing, if you are like grinding, trying to get the best reaction and stuff, I could see that being something that you do alone, and it's probably kind of isolating. I hadn't thought about the mental health part of that. And it's interesting when you said earlier that people tend to just say, stop playing video games. There's this sort of cavalier attitude about dismissing something like that. Like it's like this thing that people can just stop doing, even though it's extremely common. And a lot of people, it is a pastime. Like it's something that I have done passively for like, blowing off steam at the end of the day. But it's almost like there's this stigma against it where my instinct is to like not tell anyone in my professional life about that, and I wonder, do you face that same sort of judgment in the esports medicine world? Are there people who are like, why are you doing this? This isn't serious. This is for children, like, do you have that kind of wall when you try to like spread your ideas and stuff?
The first thing that you usually hear when you talk about esports medicine as a subspecialty amongst other doctors is just laughter, right? It's like, what? They think I'm joking, right?
Yeah, like that can't be a thing, right?
Right. Yeah. And then you have to explain esports to them. And then you have to explain video games, then you explain esports, and then you explain that and then as soon as you call these people athletes, then they lose it, right? Then they lose it. I just argue that, these people are making money and they are performing at a level that none of us are able to perform at, using the skills of their body, using the way that they've trained their body. So if golf is a sport, gaming is a sport. That's my thought process. But yeah, there definitely is a stigma. I mean, I know it's not like a stigma, but there definitely is no recognition of the field right now. It's just people aren't aware of it. Once you explain it, people tend to be a lot more receptive, and they realize the need for it. But in the beginning, there definitely is a lot of disbelief. I've gotten a lot of bad advice from people who are supposed to be, who are in leadership. I've gotten a lot of bad advice from other physicians before.
What kind of bad advice? Do you mind sharing some? I'm just curious.
So I am not pursuing a sports medicine fellowship. I withdrew my application after having lots of interviews.
And you're a PGY4, correct? Like you're finishing up residency right now. Okay.
Yep. And to some people, that seems like a bad idea to not do a year of another year of fellowship. But esports is changing so rapidly. When I first started doing this, I couldn't find another physician doing this. And now there's like 10 of us. So it's growing rapidly. Not only is it, a huge need, there's so many people out there who need what we have to say, and there's not enough of us. Like, we need more physicians doing this. I would love some healthy competition. So it's not only is there a need to be filled, but also it's an excellent business opportunity. Whenever I have the chance to do what I love and get paid for it, I'm gonna jump at that decision. So I think people realize, the smart ones realize it after I talk to them about the revenue and the amount of people who need a physician. So, yeah.
So when we were setting up this podcast, you had mentioned that you had like 3 other interviews for podcasts this week. And so I just went on Spotify and I looked up like GamerDoc, and I saw all these other podcasts that you've already been interviewed for. And so when I see something like that, it tells me that there is this demand for something that doesn't exist, right? Like you're supplying this thing that people didn't know that they wanted, that they were curious about. And so, in my eyes, that makes a lot of sense from like a personal branding or like filling a medical need also, but it just seems like there's this lack of something that people definitely want to be more exposed to.
Yeah. It's funny. I've never done that. I've never searched my name on Spotify. A lot of the podcasts I do are on Twitch too. So I didn't even know some of them might be on Spotify too. I'm going to do that after this call.
Yeah, there's several. That's what I saw. I've been listening. I'm trying not to tread over the same ground that other people have asked you. I know I have already, because that's what I want to know is like the injuries and stuff. One thing I also wanted to ask you. Oh yeah, OMT. Do you use OMT on your patients? Do you recommend that? Is there like an application for that for like esport related injuries?
I love OMT. One of the 5 fellowships that I applied for, residency categories I applied for, was a neuromuscular medicine fellowship. Uh,
Is that the one in New York?
there's a couple of them. There's one in New York. There was one in Western Michigan. I think it's gone now. There's one at MSU. There's one at West Virginia. I think there's one at Toro too. I'm not sure though.
Awesome.
Philadelphia.
Yeah, I'm an osteopathic fellow at my school, so I'm always looking for like, where can we fit
Nice.
this in? What can we do with this?
Yeah. I mean, so OMT is it's magic. Let's just be honest. Let's just be completely honest. What we know is pure magic.
Right.
It's so needed. It's so needed in all of us, and even in those who aren't using their bodies to perform. I use OMT as frequently as I possibly can. As you know, it gets a little bit tedious, and it takes a long time to do. So doing it on every patient every day is hard. But I use it when in all of my patients, and most of my patients in my outpatient PM&R practice for residency. But I use a lot of osteopathic principles when I'm teaching other people about stuff too. Mm-hmm. The Golgi tendon reflex, muscle spindle reflex, but I don't use big words like that. But a lot of what I do is based in OMT. A lot of the stretches and exercises that I give is based in OMT. I think if you're in osteopathic medical school and you're not like taking full advantage of your OMT lab, like, first of all, there's a huge need, right? Lots of people need it. But second of all, an outpatient OMT practice, even half a day a week, can supplement the rest of your practice. I'm always on the business side. The business side is something that they don't teach you in medical school, but you realize becomes more and more important as you go through your career.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I'm constantly thinking about, especially this field that we've joined. It seems like it's shifting all the time. There's huge legislative changes every year, and it just feels like we started playing a game that was like chess, and then now it's like Yahtzee or something else. And that freaks me out that like there's the shifting landscape, and I just want to make sure, so I do not fault you at all for that. There's almost like this thought that you shouldn't be thinking about the business side at all in medicine. You should just be this altruistic, benevolent person who wants to help people, which you should also, but you want to like know how to navigate that in the real world. And I think that's really smart to like keep focusing on business sides of it.
It's like the circle of life of young doctors. You graduate from residency, you get a job at a big healthcare practice. Maybe you work there for a couple of years, and then you go into a smaller private practice, right? And then when you're in your late 40s, early 50s, you open up your own practice because you realize the business sense along the way. You get smarter. Sure, like working for a large conglomerate can make you really happy, but having the ability and having the knowledge to be able to be your own bosses, you can make the decisions that you want to make, and you can I think better serve your patients when you're doing it the way that you want to do it. So it's a shame that more people aren't taught the business side of it early on.
I remember on one of the podcasts I had heard you were interviewed on, you mentioned you had a business coach. Can you talk a little bit about that? Has that been really essential, or how has that helped you?
There's YouTube videos on literally everything, and you can get better at everything. And so one of the things that I always do is, if I'm going to do something, I like to do it right. So public speaking, you can get better at public speaking. Everyone just says, oh, I'm not good at public speaking. You can get better. You can watch YouTube videos, you can get a coach, you can practice, and you will get better at public speaking.
Hey, I'm trying as best as I can, okay? You don't have to rub it in. It's our first video episode.
I'm trying. I wore a tie for you, man. I wore a tie.
I'm wearing a tie in my own house, all right? No, I'm with you. I'm just playing.
Yeah. And so one of the things is there's lots of business resources available. So I started out just looking at them on YouTube, listening to podcasts. But most areas have small business associations. And DC, I'm lucky enough that we have a women's business association that has bunch of free resources, So before this pandemic happened, I was going into the business center and just running my ideas by this like brilliant woman who should have been paid like $1,000 an hour for her skills, but was, and then would just help me and coach and give me, point me in the right direction. So
Right.
it's great. So I'm pandemic times, man.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that too. I guess I'll kind of combine this with, can you tell us a little bit about you're at the MedStar Georgetown PM&R residency, and especially during these pandemic times, what has that done to your day-to-day practice? Are you seeing, like, did they just bump you to the front lines? Are you just doing COVID patients all day, or is it business as usual? Like, what does that look like for you? And what is like the Georgetown residency like in general?
So we are very lucky in terms of other programs, like the New York PM&R programs are running the services on their own, or they're working in ICUs right now. We have been very lucky. We have not been pulled from rehab coverage. There's been talks about it, but we haven't been pulled from rehab coverage. So right now I'm just working in the rehab hospital. A lot of the COVID patients, when they maybe are off the ventilators, the question is what then, right? So a lot of them are very deconditioned, have been vent dependent for months, and haven't been up out of bed for 2 months. So they're coming to our rehab hospital. They're still COVID positive. They still are infectious. You still have to be in a negative pressure room with full PPE and 95 face shield. But they need rehab, and they need rehab doctors taking care of them. So it has changed. They're a significant portion of our patient care right now. The hospital, I can't really go into specifics, but the hospital layout has changed. So it's been different. So for the past couple of months, or for April, I was doing telemedicine. I was doing just like outpatient PM&R telemedicine, and the sense of waiting and not helping was worse than, being exposed to coronavirus every day. It was worse. Now, because this is what we're trained for. This is why we went into medicine, right? Was when other people are running away from the disaster, you have to run towards it. So this is what we trained for. And to finally, be able to help and be able to actually lay my hands on these people and take care of their medical needs it feels good. It does. It was better than doing telemedicine and just treating back pain, to be honest with you.
Well, I think a lot of medical students feel the same way. I think there's like this desire to help, and like I obviously don't have all the training I need to help out, and so I can't do anything, and we can't even be on rotations. And a lot of my classmates were just frustrated. We want to do something. We see all this stuff in the news, and we just want to help. And there's some people coming up with kind of innovative ways to help out in terms of offering to babysit or get groceries for like your local hospital, but it's really like regional dependent if that's even necessary, so that's awesome that you've been able to get exposed to that, and you've been able to work and help people, and I imagine that's got to be very rewarding, especially when everyone just knows how big of a deal this is.
Yeah. And then to answer the second part of your question, the Georgetown residency, it's great. There's lots of opportunities. Working where National Rehab Hospital is the largest rehab hospital for 150 miles. It's the best rehab hospital in the area. And it's right, it's in downtown DC, or not downtown, but it's in DC proper. So you get a wide variety of patient care opportunities. My favorite part about Georgetown, though, is our adaptive sports program. So we have a very robust adaptive sports program. Wheelchair basketball, wheelchair rugby. We have very good teams, right? We have Paralympians on our teams, so it's very cool. So yeah, awesome. Georgetown's great.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask you also, so your focus on going back to sort of the esports side of things, what would be the difference between like your focus and someone who sees like a white collar business guy who's in a cubicle crunching away on a keyboard all day? Has that threat of like that kind of lifestyle that's been around? How is it different having like a focus on esports or esports athletes How is that different than just focusing someone who's already in a cubicle, the same kind of postural problems? What's the difference, I guess?
That's actually where I get a lot of my data from, to be honest with you, about the ergonomic side of it, because the field is so new that the studies that we have looking at injuries in these people is like an N of 40, So, but if you look at large ergonomic studies on office workers, you have a lot of really good data. I actually, there's not a big difference in the ergonomic side of it, right? So appropriate chair height, appropriate desk height, appropriate monitor height, keyboard angle, mouse angle. Those are all things that we draw from that population. But that is really where the similarities end. How healthily your desk should be set up is where the similarities end. Because office workers, they're getting up, they're taking breaks. They aren't so immersed in what they're doing that they don't forget to pee or eat for 12 hours. Unless you're like a really good worker. But you're not doing the amount of things that these esports athletes are doing. You're not, unless you're typing 600 words per minute, you're just not, doing the same types of things. And then the mental side is so different. But you're totally right. The office worker population is great. It's great. That similarity is great because we get a lot of good data from those people. So that's a good question.
And can you briefly tell us what are some of like the big tips and advice that you give people for like, the 20-20-20 rule? Is that right? The 20-20-20 rule?
Yeah, good job.
And what other recommendations do you have?
You're like, what kind of recommendations do you have for someone who sits at their desk all day? Let me just write this down.
Who's doing virtual didactics and studying all day long. What should I do?
Yeah, exactly. The 20-20-20 rule is a great one. So for those of you who don't know, every 20 minutes of looking at a computer screen, you want to look at a spot 20 feet away for 20 seconds. And that is going to, help you keep your eyes healthy, prevent accommodative spasm, give your eyes a little bit of a break. Get your eyes checked every year, right? That's a big one. So the experts recommend for high risk populations getting your eyes checked every year. And if gamers aren't high risk, or if med students who stare at computer screens all day aren't high risk, then I don't know who is. Making sure your setup is ergonomic is really important. I think that a lot of us who might be working at home more often and maybe don't have the same chair that we do at work or at school, or maybe we're working at our kitchen table, that can be really difficult. And so, it's these little things that build up over time that cause the back pain. So making sure that the chair you're in, your hips are not below your knees, making sure the top of your monitor is at eye level and it's an arm's length away, making sure that you don't have too much of a bend in your elbows is super important. For a lot of people who are working from home right now, I say get a Bluetooth keyboard, because if you're on your laptop, you're not going to be, your arms and your head aren't going to be in the correct position, right? Because you're either going to be up here or looking down here. So getting a Bluetooth keyboard is super important. And then taking breaks to stretch is huge. I'm a big fan of, the little things building up over time rather than making big drastic life changes. So every hour or so, just like getting up and doing a sun salutation or doing your favorite stretch or doing a chest opener. We spend all of our day internally rotated and right in front of us, and we never do this, right? When's the last time you put your arms back unless you do yoga? So just reaching up and doing like a wall slide. Oh my God, wall slides are the worst, but they're so good for you. So putting your back, your shoulders, your elbows, and your hands and your butt against the wall, and then just doing a wall slide up and down. Those can be just life-changing. So those are really my biggest tips, are making sure your setup's ergonomic, taking care of your eyes, and then taking stretch breaks.
Awesome. So when I went into Staples the other day to look for a better webcam than the one that I have for this specific interview, I see these like gamer chairs that are like these Star Trek monstrosities.
Oh my God.
Do we all need those? Is that the future?
I was actually just quoted in an article about gaming chairs. It's the biggest waste of money that has ever been. It's marketing, right? It's marketing. Yeah. These chairs are $40 office chairs that they slap orange paint on, put a good logo on, and then mark it up to $300. Chairs are important. Sure. If you want a nice chair, if you want to spend $700 on a Herman Miller office chair, you're going to have, a better time, but it's about posture. It really is. I'm sitting in an IKEA chair, an IKEA dining room table chair. I don't have a desk chair. I don't have an office chair because I don't want to be sitting back in it all day. I want to be sitting up with good posture, contracting my core. But gaming chairs are atrocious. I hate the little pillows. The little pillows get me every time. Just don't understand the pillows. But yeah,
don't they look cool though? You could really do something in that chair.
Right. And the gaming chairs came from people having a bunch of racing chairs left over and then marketing it, redesigning it, and selling them as gaming chairs. And that's why they look like that. And racing chairs are terrible for sitting in. They're bucket seats. You can't move around. So wow. It's not based on science.
Well, that's good to know. So do you have any advice for someone who is interested in PM&R in terms of getting into a residency? And also for someone, what if they wanted to do what you do, focus on esports? How could they get involved and get started in that? Do they just have to sort of pave the way because there really isn't anyone doing it and it's really, you're the one setting it up? Or what advice would you have for those people?
I think that every single med student should be on social media in a professional setting. Social media, professional Twitter is your living resume. The connections you make on Twitter, the people you engage with on Twitter, you would never normally interact with. But if you have a social media and you use it correctly, you can engage with the chair of PM&R at any program you want to. You can get your name found out. I remember we had this medical student a year ago who, was very active on Twitter, and my program director was like, she's the one who's famous on Twitter. And it was a big deal. And, using social media 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, if you wanted to get your name out there, you had to pick up the phone, you had to call someone, you had to meet them at a conference, go shake their hand at a conference. And now all you need is your phone. All you need is, you can be your own publicist, you can be your own marketing director, you can be your own business coach. If you make a professional Twitter, slap a professional photo on it, make your username Doctor Migliore, whatever, doctor, and then your last name, and then just comment on other people's posts for 2 weeks and just, look at the people that you interact with. So I would say if you want to be involved in PM&R loves Twitter. PM&R loves Twitter.
Yeah, I've just been discovering that. That's how I think I found you. I just searched these terms like PM&R, physiatry, whatever. And I think that's how I ended up following you. And then I was like, oh, that's interesting. Esports medicine. Never heard of that.
Yeah. So getting on Twitter is huge. And it's also a way for you to make whatever field you want to make. It allows us to reach people who we can't reach. It allows us to get our message out there. So if you want to start something, if you want to do something, just do it. And also just do it. Your idea is going to be trash in the beginning. My idea for what GamerDoc was 2 years ago was nothing like what it is today. And what it's going to be like 2 years from now is nothing like what it was today. So
yeah. What do you see in the future? I was going to ask you that too. What's the future of esports medicine or what's the future of GamerDoc, what you're doing specifically?
So the future of esports medicine is an easier question. I think there's going to be a lot more physicians in it, more and more large healthcare conglomerates are partnering with esports organizations. Orlando Health and Magic Gaming, MedStar, and NBA 2K, the Wizards District Gaming, Monumental Esports. I think there's going to be a lot more partnerships. And right now, who might be treating those patients might just be a normal sports medicine doctor who the only thing they know about gaming is Fortnite from their 6-year-old. But if you're in that conglomerate, if you're one of those sports medicine doctors and you say, hey, I know about esports, I've read these papers, I know that I can treat them, that's an opportunity for you. So I think we're going to have more providers who know who really know what they're doing treating these patients. I think that, we're going to have a society for esports medicine like we do for regular sports medicine, like we do for PM&R. I think there's going to be a lot more training programs that you have to pay for online. I think there's going to be a lot of literature. Yeah, of course. No, I know it's like there's so many ways. And then the same, the question that you asked about what I see my future, that's such a good segue, because there are so many things that I can do right now. There are so many, if you want to be in esports medicine, there are so many things that we need. There's so many things to do. You can treat casual gamers, you can treat the pros, you can only do performance stuff, you can only do eye training, and people will need you, people will want you. So my future, we'll see. I've got a couple big things in the works that I can't talk about.
Okay, all right.
But yeah, I've been a little bit like hamstrung the past couple, since inception, because I am under my residency contract. I am under a contract with MedStar. Right. So I officially can't incorporate a business. I officially cannot take money for services yet. So, and when you don't take money for services, people don't respect you. And so
it's not real till you're making money, right?
Exactly. So July 1st incorporating, and then I have a whole business plan that I'm launching. So ask me that question July 2nd.
Okay, yeah, we'll table this for now. We'll revisit it in a few months. I wanted to ask you also about like having social media and stuff. Like I have a professional Twitter, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are anonymizing themselves on social media. And I know that, you have been on podcasts. I know you stream on Twitch. Are you worried about like being professional at all times? It seems like you want to like let loose in some of that stuff, but like, can you? And I feel like people are getting in trouble for professionalism, which when you think about it, I feel like it's more of a vague thing than what does that mean? Being professional. It's just never offending anyone, always saying polite, like not acknowledging video games, because that's not professional. Like that's
right?
That would be my instinct on it, So how does that what is that like? Like if you're going to be, out in the public, do you have to change your behavior, or do you just keep yourself reined in at all times? Is that something you worry about, or is it just something that you just, that's what being an adult professional is, it's a role you just are.
You're coming up with some good questions. You get an A. You get an A on this.
I didn't write this one down for you. This is just off the top. So
I think that as physicians, let's be honest, we all have a little bit of an ego. We, especially when you get further into your career, professionalism becomes a lot less about how to gain the respect of the people around you, and it becomes a lot more about gatekeeping, I think. I think that when people use the term professionalism, I don't think they mean professionalism. So my theory on all of this is the same that I am with my patients. What matters at the end of the day is that they trust you and they listen to you.
And I've always thought that same thing. Like I'm not going to insist, call me Doctor Eggett at all times. Like I don't, it's important. But like, I personally don't care, but I know people would like, important people have told me you must, like, everyone is doctor. Even if they say, call me Jeff, you call them doctor. And if they're not wearing socks during their interview, they're not getting in, because if you're not wearing socks, you can't be trusted to practice medicine.
Gatekeeping.
Yeah.
It's gatekeeping. I think that just having a little bit of empathy and having a little bit of, humanism in your patient interactions goes a lot further than a white coat. And that is how I try and do Gamer Doc, right? I want people to respect me, so they listen to what I say. But I don't want them to fear me. I don't want them to think that I am like this holier than thou doctor. I'm a human, I'm a person, and I just happen to be a doctor and a gamer. So that is what I do when I'm out in public. That's what I do when I'm on podcasts, unless you see the ones after 10 p.m. And that's kind of the air that I try and incorporate into my life. So
yeah, it does seem like doctors are on this pedestal, and that you almost need to be like this god to treat humans, but really we're humans, like trying to treat humans,
right.
But still, like I understand that professionalism is important,
Yes, definitely.
That is why I am wearing a tie right now. Some weird perspective, I'm like, this is professional, this look good,
you look nice too. You look
nice.
Thank
you. I really tried. I ironed this shirt and everything. But it also just seems like this kind of scary ground to be on too, that like I You mentioned that you wanted to like go into English or literature, and I had a similar background. I loved my English classes. I thought I was going to be a high school English teacher, and I like to write creatively, right? And I write about sort of like blogging about medical school and sort of in a funny little way, or I say things maybe, and it's nothing is like bad in it, but it's my personality, and it's like weird, goofy takes that I think it's my literary voice or whatever, and then I'll get this published online, and then I'll think, God, should I be doing this? Like, is someone gonna look at this and say, unprofessional? If you're like referencing Lord of the Rings or something when you're talking about like you trekking to Mordor is like studying for step 1, is someone gonna read that and be like, get out of here? Part of me is always thinking like, should I be canning this stuff? Should I wait until after medical school, and then after residency, and then after fellowship when I'm totally autonomous, and then I can have a personality again? Or do I, just try to, it's this precarious thing you're just kind of perched on, and, not trying to balance out and being too unprofessional or being too robotic. But it's something I think about a lot. And you have a very public persona with GamerDoc, and it's just interesting to hear your take on it.
Yeah, whenever it's such a hard decision, because like you're saying that you hit the nail on the head. You're in med school, and then you have to apply for residency. So your situation is also a lot different than mine. I never have to work for someone. I have no plans of having a boss ever again in my life after June 30th.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, and that was one of my goals. That's one of my personal goals, is to work for myself. So if that's not important to someone else, it doesn't matter. If you're fine having a boss, then more power to you. But having to have people look at you and look at the things that you've done, and then judge you and extend an invitation to come to their program, is such a hard position to be in. And that's why another reason why I really like social media is because you can really cultivate an image. You can cultivate a brand on social media that will come before you. So instead of people searching for your name when they see your application and then finding your high school track records, they will know your name already, because they'll have seen you on Twitter, and they'll know the type of person you are, and they'll know the things that you've done, and this image that you've cultivated. Because let's be honest, we're all allowed to be the best versions of ourselves on the internet. That is another reason why I love social media. It's because it is framing the conversation before you even go into that interview.
So if you're streaming on Twitch and you're starting to rage, you just turn it off. You just bottle that up, and
Oh God, I'm having flashbacks to last Monday. Yeah, I mean, I tend to rage. I don't rage. I'm playing Ocarina of Time Zelda right now on stream.
Classic.
So you can't get that angry, and you're not like yelling at actual humans. You're just yelling at like wolves and stuff,
or
and,
the
like,
water temple.
Yeah. So yeah, I tend to I do rein in certain things. Like I don't swear on stream. I try not to swear in life. Like not in life, just to be clear, not in life, not in my professional life.
Right.
And that's also just making the content more accessible and more kid friendly. So yeah, it's difficult sometimes.
I relate to that. Well, I think that's all I wanted to ask you. Is there a good place, if people wanted to contact you, how can they reach out to you?
Twitter is where it's at now. And in order to reach out to me now, you have to make a Twitter. Everyone has to make a professional Twitter.
I mean, especially for PM&R. Like that's one thing I have noticed. There's so many people on Twitter for PM&R. It's a very huge community. So what is your Twitter handle?
So the GamerDoc one is hashtag at GamerDoc _ at the end. Really rolls off the tongue, the underscore symbol. But if you just type in GamerDoc, it'll come up. And then the other more boring one is Doctor Migliore. So
awesome.
Just stick with the GamerDoc one, to be honest with you.
Great. Well, Dr. Migliore, thank you so much. This has been awesome. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and I'm excited to see what you do in the future.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a pleasure, a Sunday morning pleasure.